We've got Wink Stradamus on the show today. He is currently 9-0, our Wednesday guest, picking 49ers games. Brandon Aiyuk, he's always open. 49ers could possibly bring in some reinforcements, even post-trade deadline. All that and more coming up on today's Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you as always at BD Peacock at Eric_Crocker. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big ups to all the everydayers out there. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Very special Winky Wednesday episode. Our weekly guest, Nicholas Winkler, joining us today. My former radio colleague, my former 49ers podcast co-host way back in the day now. Going on 7 years back in the day since we were doing the Gold Faithful pod, also known as the voice of the fan, and also now known as Wink Stradamus, because Wink, congratulations on now being 9-0, predicting San Francisco 49ers wins and losses. So I give you the floor. Tell us what's going to happen next, and we don't even have to watch the game this week.
I mean, before we move forward, let me just give a shout out to the two people who felt the need to say congratulations on that, as opposed to the hundreds of people who were hating on my picks when I picked them to lose. It's just incredible how different it can get when the 49ers are losing and it's my fault. But when they win, it's not my fault. Come on.
Yeah, everyone loves you when they win and you pick it, and everyone hates you when they lose, but everyone forgets that not only did you pick the 3 losses, you picked a lot of wins to come after those 3 losses, including last week, including, if I'm not mistaken, upcoming against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and going all the way to February and Super Bowl 58.
Yeah, guys, so if we're going to be there, when we're down and when we're struggling and when we're injured and this and that, let's also be there when we're healthy and dominating a pretty good football team. So it was cool. It was a lot of fun to watch that game, and obviously fun to have my predictions be right from here, to up until now. And what, like you said, man, Tampa Bay coming in, this seems like another win for the 49ers. They came out of the game relatively healthy, which to me was kind of the most important thing. I liked that they were trying to get McCaffrey that touchdown at the end, right? But at the same time, there's a part of me that's like, don't mess this up.
Yeah.
Don't get hurt. If you get hurt doing this, like one's going to forgive you.
Imagine if McCaffrey got hurt on one of those
like rolled an ankle or something on that last play, and you're like, well, good. I hope that was worth it, guys.
Hey, Croc, are the 49ers, do you think the same about the 49ers right now than you did after they were 5-0? Did that win, being as dominating as it was on the road against a 6-win team like the Jacksonville Jaguars, did it just kind of erase all 3 of those losses?
Yeah, I think, one thing that we've tried to do is not ride the wave too much, and we kind of understood who and what this team was. It was just the different adversities that they're going to go through during the season. Like, how do they figure out how to overcome those things to eventually be a championship team? Now, if they would have lost to Jacksonville, I think my worry meter would have started to spike. But prior to that, I told everybody, look, 3-game losing streak, I get it. That's not great, but just relax. Like, this is a well-coached team with a lot of good players. They typically figure out these type of things. Again, my biggest thing is when it's not perfect, is it going to go back to looking like what it looked like those 3 games where you only scored 17 points? Like, that will always be that's a question I hope at some point kind of gets answered, where they either start up or fall behind, and we can see some type of comeback to where I know like they can handle that. Because I feel like on the road to a Super Bowl, you will be in a situation like that, and they didn't handle it well during that losing streak. So that's the one thing that I still would like to see. But outside of that, just who the 49ers are, I haven't wavered on that this is a good football team.
Wink, if you were power ranking the NFC especially, but the NFL right now, the 49ers were number one in everybody's power rankings after 5 weeks. Do you put them back at number one? Do you have them number two? Would you put them behind the Chiefs and the Eagles, the Lions that have better records than the 49ers right now? Where do you have the 49ers currently ranked after we've seen insanely white hot 5-0 start, some weird business for 3 weeks, a bye week, and then see them come back and look like that same team that they were the first 5 weeks against the Jaguars in week 10?
Yeah, I mean, the fandom in me is like, they're number one. Let's go. Best team in the NFL. But then realistically, you have to factor in those 3 losses when you're talking about a power ranking in the NFL season. And they're definitely a top 5 team at this point. I don't think you can put them up at number one. What the Eagles are doing right now is pretty impressive. What the Lions have done has been impressive. Their strength of schedule, not quite as difficult, but they're still winning football games. And that's really impressive. So I think in the NFC, I think you could have the 49ers at 2. Right above the Lions, or I could even understand why someone would put them at 3 with the Detroit team that's playing extremely well right now, just right ahead of them. And in the NFL as a whole, I mean, I like what the Chiefs are doing. There's not a whole lot else in the AFC right now that really, really impresses me. The Bengals were starting to come back, but they took a big step back with that loss. Baltimore, same thing. They looked fantastic. They took a big L. So it's kind of up in the air right now. But I think if you had one team at the top, and 49er fans are going to hate me for saying this right now, but it's probably the Philadelphia Eagles just based on their record alone.
I think we've seen the 49ers play their best ball. We haven't quite seen the Eagles play their best ball yet. They've played some good games. They've kind of had slow starts, and then they're like, oh yeah, we're better than these teams, and kind of, run away from teams in the second half, which is a sign of a good football team. But when you look at just overall point differential, I mean, the Cowboys have almost twice as much point differential as the Philadelphia Eagles do. The Eagles won 8 games by a combined 57 points of their in their plus minus. The Dallas Cowboys are 104 plus minus, but in the NFC, the Niners are number 1, plus 109 in the point differential category. And actually the Seattle Seahawks are -1, which is kind of wild there. So the 49ers are the only plus team in the entire NFC West right now, despite having the same record at 6-3 as the Seattle Seahawks do. And the Niners are number 2 in the NFL. Plus 113 is the Baltimore Ravens, plus minus. Surprisingly, the Miami Dolphins is not as high, even though they put up 70 points on the Dolphins or on the Broncos one week. They're plus 60 point differential, and the Dolphins beat up on bad teams, but aren't beating good teams. But the Buffalo Bills we saw are 5-5 after their loss on Monday Night Football. You look around the league right now, and the Chiefs aren't as strong top to bottom. They've got their defense is playing really well, got a good offensive line, but as far as the weapons and the receiving weapons, I don't think the Chiefs are necessarily as scary as they were with Tyreek Hill back in the day. I mentioned how the Eagles haven't played like that complete game, and maybe they're just not that team either. New coordinators on both sides of the ball. There's a lot of, I think it's clear which teams are good. There's about 5 of those teams in the NFL in that tier, and the 49ers are among them. But I think any of those teams could beat any of the other teams. And I don't know that there's a team that's going to run away with anything this year. I think the Philadelphia Eagles are going to have a couple of losses too on their schedule, and one might happen in week 13 against the San Francisco 49ers. So this is getting exciting to me because I think we're seeing which teams are good. But as far as the good teams, like I think the 49ers, I think Vegas would have the 49ers favored against the Lions, right? But it probably wouldn't be by that much. This is going to be a fun tournament once we get to it, but I think it's pretty clear which those teams are, especially in the NFC.
I think point differential is a tricky one, right? Because you mentioned a couple of teams there, like the Miami Dolphins. Well, they did get blown out by Buffalo Bills. So that can kind of sway that point differential. And the Dallas Cowboys, you talked about them at plus like 104 or whatever, but they just destroyed the Giants 2 times. You know, like the first one was 40-0. The next one, it was like similar to that, right? Like
almost their entire plus side is those 2 games. It's almost 100.
We only got to destroy them once.
Yeah,
that's true. Right. Yeah.
And the Cowboys are a legit team. Like they are good. I think, 49er fans have this vision that the way they see the Dallas Cowboys because of how the 49ers have just manhandled them. And I still don't know why the Cowboys just have so much trouble against the 49ers. It could be because of the way the 49ers are built. I don't know if the 49ers are just in their heads, but outside of the 49ers, the Cowboys play typically good football. Now, they got a weird loss too. The Arizona Cardinals only win has been against the Dallas Cowboys. Like, that is like the oddest game right there.
The Cards got another one. The Cards snuck away with another one last week. They got two.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Kyler Murray's back, though. That changes things, too, when the Niners play the Cardinals.
I actually watched a lot of that game, the Falcons game.
Yeah.
Kyler Murray, I thought, was good. Like, it was kind of weird. It was kind of a low-scoring game for a while, like 17-22.
That's every
was quick.
But Murray looked like Murray. He did.
He did.
Next, guys, I want to talk about one player in particular on the San Francisco 49ers offense. That is Brandon Aiyuk, and just some of the separation numbers and what he's doing for the 49ers offense and who we think he actually is amongst NFL elite wide receivers. Talking about the D-line rotation and a couple of names that could potentially be added to the 49ers organization here late in the season as well. Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. And why would you not go to the place where there's already the most job seekers anyway, at LinkedIn? All you do is you add your job to the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile, and it spreads the word that you're hiring. And then you utilize simple tools like screening questions that make it easy to focus on just the right candidates with the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you want to interview and hire. That is why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. And guys, 49ers fans come strong, and even non-49ers fans have come strong betting on the 49ers this year. The Niners still had top 3 Super Bowl odds even after their 3-game skid, and that is only going to go up now for the 49ers after dominating the Jacksonville Jaguars in Week 10. But you can still bet on those 49ers to win the Super Bowl. You can bet on rookies of the year. You can bet on the NFL draft. There's player props, spreads, over-unders, and a whole lot more at FanDuel. Coach of the year, Kyle Shanahan. I think that would be one as well. And how about Brock Purdy? Still got those underdog MVP odds as well. And right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. So check out FanDuel. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, now is the time to get in on that action, not just NFL football to bet on either. There is NBA, NHL, motorsports, combat sports, everything you can think of in the sporting world, you can find it at FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. That is FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. So, Brandon Aiyuk, we got a question here, and I've been meaning to bring this up because I see the graphs all the time, Croc, and we've talked about Brandon Aiyuk and how good he is at getting open, and he's the most receiver the 49ers have, with a very interesting offense made up of a lot of OWs and versatile weapons. And Billiam had this question, and he referenced Matt Harmon, who does the reception perception. And Matt Harmon's always loved Brandon Aiyuk because of his ability to separate as a wide receiver. And Billiam's question is kind of like, should we be talking more about Brandon Aiyuk as a wide receiver 1? Is Brandon Aiyuk a wide receiver 1? And how much of his separation metrics, which is some of the best in the NFL, how much is that on just Brandon Aiyuk being a dude at wide receiver? How much of that is Kyle Shanahan on the offense? And how much of that is how defenses have to play the San Francisco 49ers?
I think a lot of it early on was on Kyle Shanahan a little bit more so. I think coming out of Arizona State, he was someone that could definitely separate, but you weren't quite seeing it on a consistent basis at the NFL level. Some of that could have been from just thinking a lot. You know, I talked about my time in the NFL where, you know, the one thing that I realized right away, they overload you so much with information. You're thinking as you're trying to play so much, it kind of takes away a little bit of your athleticism. Well, fast forward 4 years for a guy like Brandon Aiyuk now, he's comfortable in the system, understands what's asked of him. So now he's separating from a route standpoint. But then also it definitely helps to have a guy like Kyle Shanahan who's going to scheme you open on some of these deep crosser routes, over routes. He understands how to manipulate and put guys in conflict with whatever their keys are and how that's going to free up his guy. So if you look at Brandon Aiyuk's chart here, where he's wide open more than any other receiver in the NFL by a large margin too, and you couple that with what you're seeing from Brock Purdy's, there's a chart like that for Brock Purdy and how he's throwing to the most wide open receivers by a large margin. I think the one thing that is consistent there is who's calling the plays, and that's Kyle Shanahan. So great job by Brock taking advantage of it and being consistent with it and doing a good job. Awesome job by Aiyuk. To answer the question, is he a wide receiver one? I think I want to believe that, but typically you don't see wide receiver ones go a game where they only get 3 targets in an entire game. So.
Most wide receiver ones aren't like the 4th option on your offense either, right, Wink? So and the question doesn't really matter. It's like, oh, fans always want to argue for their guy. He's the best wide receiver in the NFL or whatever. So as far as where he ranks in the league, he's one of the top 32 wide receivers. Is he a true one where he's a one no matter what, and whoever else would be on the team's number 2? You could argue that he's not the number 1 on the 49ers because Deebo Samuel is, and that's the way the offense is run. And so I would say that he's the 2 on the Niners even. So, but the question is, because he's going to be a free agent, like, do you pay him like a 1? Would he get that from another team that expects him to be a 1? And when he's out of the system with the 49ers and expected to be a 1, paid like a 1, and doesn't have all of Shanahan and everybody else around him to take eyeballs and to take bodies away from him on the defensive side of the football that are playing against him, I wonder how different that would look. Do you think a team should say, oh, Brandon's a 1, we're going to pay Aiyuk to be our wide receiver 1 and build our passing game around him as the number 1 receiver?
Right. I mean, is Aiyuk that good because guys are focused on Deebo and McCaffrey and Kittle? And so all of a sudden he's getting this, single man coverage, or, he's going into the soft part of the zone because they're like, let's focus the zone more over here where we know these other guys are going to be. So is that a big part of Aiyuk's game? Probably, but that doesn't negate the fact that he's still a really good wide receiver. But it's funny because the 49ers, we've been doing this for years now, and a lot of times it's like, where's that vertical threat, right? Where's that guy that can stretch the field? And when Brock Purdy's standing back there and he throws the ball down the field, I know it's going to Aiyuk, right? And I'm like, okay, 11's going to be on the other end of that. And most of the time he is. Brock Purdy right now, 3rd in the NFL in completions over 20 yards down the field, which is something the 49ers just have not had. And is it Aiyuk, or again, is it Kyle Shanahan? Is it a wonderful combination of the two? Probably, but a team is definitely going to go after Aiyuk. They're going to give him a ton of money. We see how that wide receiver free agent market is every single year, where guys that you're like, whoa, he was a number 2 on his team, and now he's getting paid like a number 1 over here. That's probably what's going to happen with Aiyuk, unfortunately.
I put the overlay on the screen here, which is which shows the quarterback graph. And it's funny because when you look at the Brandon Aiyuk separation graph, and then you look at the Brock Purdy throwing to open receivers graph, it looks identical. They're in the same spot, like way over there. So there's a lot going on. Like, Aiyuk is good, and the offense is good, and Shanahan is good, and there's other good players. So there's a lot of attention to other things that defenses have to pay to the 49ers, and that lets Brandon Aiyuk get open a lot in the intermediate part of the field, and it's pretty telling when you see this graph, and Brock Purdy's over there on the upper right quadrant, kind of all by himself with how often he's throwing to open receivers. So a lot going on with the San Francisco 49ers offense right now.
What do you think about guys being higher than him on this, right? So the way the graph shows is to the right is how wide open the receivers are, and then the higher up you go is the percentage of passes he's completing to the wide open guys. And it looks like there's about 10 guys or so ahead of him in that category. Mm-hmm. So what do you take away from that? Is there still some meat on the bone that he's leaving, and he'll just figure that out either as the season goes on or as his career goes on, where he just gets more comfortable with the concepts, what he's seeing from defenses, and be able to take advantage of that even more. Because on paper, I mean, he's playing at an extremely high level, of course, but it looks like here he actually could be doing a little better. Am I reading that correctly?
It's you could take it that way. It's also, and like all things, there's a lot of gray area to it as well. And this is all routes. So what the 49ers are trying to do a lot is maybe different than where there's a player that's open somewhere who's maybe a clear out guy, or maybe not part of the route entirely, or because this is separation on all routes. With this graph we're looking at with the quarterbacks, with Brock Purdy having more separation, and we see how often Brock Purdy's throwing it into pretty tight windows and throwing it with anticipation, and because defenses are trying to stop that area of the field where they know the 49ers are going to try to go. So I think there's a little bit of all of that, and it isn't to say that defenses are just completely leaving people open because they know that Brock is not going to try it, or that the offense is not going to go there, or Brandon Aiyuk is left open because they're not worried about him or anything like that. But there's a little bit of everything involved and baked in here. But when you look at the outliers, I think it's pretty telling. When you see Brock Purdy all the way to the right, and maybe he's a little clustered up with some other guys as far as how often the percentage of his throws he's throwing to those open receivers. I don't think that's a decision-making thing at all, a problem at all for Brock Purdy. But when you see how far out the other stuff, and on the other side, when you see Justin Fields, who just never has open receivers, I think a lot of that is offense, and a lot of that is who you're throwing to. And so when you look at all of these efficiency numbers, you look at all the numbers for all these, it's just like, it's everything. It's, you have a good running game, teams are trying to stop it. You have a good coordinator, and you have good players. And I think it's just a combination of all those things.
When you see a guy like Justin Fields all the way to the left like that, right, where it's just like guys just aren't getting open, does that add a little context as to why maybe sometimes quarterbacks start to see ghost and don't maybe pan out at the NFL level?
Probably.
Because it's like their situations aren't created equal. Yeah. And I'm not saying that Justin Fields, if you plugged him into the 49ers, all of a sudden he'd be this amazing quarterback. Like we've seen other quarterbacks come into this offense and not be good, or not nearly as good as Brock Purdy. But when you see something like that, it does kind of put some things in the context where it's like, dang, that's tough. Like that is a tough situation for Justin Fields. And I know some people will point to Badger or whatever, with the quarterback that's been filling in, but it ain't like he's lighting the world on fire either. He's just doing enough, and they're winning. I thought Fields was starting to play much better before his injury. That's with his receivers not really creating separation for him.
No doubt. Yeah, it's again, it's everything. And yeah, Fields, whoever, a lot of quarterbacks would like to come play in the 49ers offense. I think that's why Sam Darnold signed for cheaper to even be a backup with the 49ers, getting this system, have the benefits there. And, for Brandon Aiyuk, it's a double-edged sword. It's like, okay, you want more targets, but you want more attention from the defense as well. And you want a worse quarterback and a worse coordinator potentially, because you could end up with that situation.
Which is probably what's going to happen. As I mentioned, if you start throwing big numbers at him, he's going to go somewhere else, because I don't think the 49ers will be able to compete in a bidding war for Brandon Aiyuk.
Unless they choose Aiyuk over Debo, too. That potentially could
You're
be
right.
it.
And if there's a team that wants to emphasize him more in the passing game, right? Like they throw the money at him and they would emphasize him, he will get open. Like the 49ers, I don't think they do, outside of their scheme, they don't do a whole lot to free their like number one guy up. Like if you watch the Dallas Cowboys and all that they do with CeeDee Lamb, they go to him a ton. He's going to get his targets. I think he's had like 3 or 4 straight games, like over 150 yards receiving, and they're winning. He's going to get his numbers, but he'll be lined up wide left, and then they'll motion him down to a stack, and he get free releases, and they understand how to put guys into a bind. And it's like, we're gonna put the ball in our guys' hands. And I think 49ers just have so many good guys. It's like, we'll just run our offense and it'll work.
And he kind of gets it just in the natural progression of the game.
Right.
All right, next, guys. There's a couple names out there. Jack Jones, waived by the Patriots. Ken Dorsey, fired as offensive coordinator. Should we bring those guys in to the San Francisco 49ers next? Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. PrizePicks, not only can you have a ton of fun playing daily fantasy all season long, but you can win up to 25 times your money as well this football season. And again, it couldn't be easier. All you do is you select 2 or more players on PrizePicks, and you pick more or less on their projected stats on PrizePicks.com or the PrizePicks app, and potentially turn $10 into $250. And now with basketball season here, you can pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League at PrizePicks, a league created specifically for combination projections. For example, it includes 2 or more players from different sports or leagues, like George Kittle plus Steph Curry, combination of 10.5 of 3 points made plus receptions. So you get Curry hitting threes, you get receptions for George Kittle. You put those together. If you hit the 10.5, I'm just using that as an example. I don't know what the combo is right now on PrizePicks, but you can find it at prizepicks.com or by downloading the PrizePicks app and have yourself a lot of fun playing daily fantasy sports and winning some money as well. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL or download the app. Use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100 at PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Here we go. Jack Jones. Croc, your thoughts as our resident defensive back expert? Dude had an awesome rookie year, 4th round pick in 2022, and all of a sudden just gets waived by Bill Belichick and the New England Patriots. J.C. Jackson, who they traded for after he signed with the Chargers, they traded back for him at the deadline this year, and then he didn't even travel with him to Germany. New England's all kinds of weird. That's a disaster. I don't know what's going on over there, but it's kind of a red flag if they don't want you in their program either. So there's off-field questions. I don't know if it's a great fit for the 49ers character-wise. I don't know anything about Jack Jones personally, but they were kicking around DBs and cornerbacks at the trade deadline. From a need perspective, all you got to do is claim him on a rookie contract. Seems like something the Niners might be interested in.
You know, Jack Jones was a guy who was a legit recruit heading to USC out of Long Beach, and it just did not work out. Like, he was getting cooked kind of left and right. So he ended up kind of leaving there after a couple years, going to a junior college, you know, going there, and then he goes to Arizona State, and he's there for like 3 more years. So I don't know how many years this guy had in college. It felt like 7 years, and COVID kind of maybe had something to do with that. Some of these guys getting those extra years, but he played a lot of college football. And ultimately, I think turned it around at Arizona State to tune him being able to be drafted in the 4th round. I think it was kind of a surprise to me when I would watch games and actually see him doing well for the New England Patriots. And it's like, okay, like he just figured it out. Maybe he just matured. And then the off the field issues started happening. I want to say, and I don't want to get him mixed up with anyone else, but like he was like arrested for like a gun charge or something like that. Like he went to the airport and accidentally left a gun in his bag, which, as someone who carries pistols, like I can understand how that might happen. Like you got to be much more careful than that. But I know people are gonna kill. Like, how does they let that happen? Like when he might have just forgot it was in his bag. And I know some people are like, how do you forget it's in your check-in bag? But anyways, he had that incident at the airport. That was red flag number 1. I thought he might have got released from New England then. And then now you see him just out of the blue get released in the middle of the season. So he's clearly doing something that Belichick and those guys do not like. I think I saw something along the lines of him missing curfew, and maybe that was their final straw with the Jack Jones experiments. And he doesn't have enough equity built in to have any of those type of mishaps. When you're a 4th round pick, got to treat it like you're undrafted and be on point. They gave him a lot of chances, didn't work out. And I'm not sure it'll work out with him being a culture fit in the 49ers locker room with those kind of issues.
Wink, what about Ken Dorsey? Bay Area legend, Orinda, I believe, is where he played his high school ball before he went to the Miami Hurricanes, won a whole bunch of games playing quarterback for them. 49ers legend, former 49ers quarterback, Ken Dorsey, scapegoated over in Buffalo, fired after that Monday Night Football loss. So the 49ers bring in another mind, another voice in the room, in hometown kid Ken Dorsey.
Yeah, you're talking about a guy who got a raw deal. I mean, what he did in Buffalo, I think, was fantastic. He's not out there fumbling. He's not out there throwing picks and tipped balls and this and that. I really like what Ken Dorsey's done. I think if you could bring in Ken Dorsey and give him any sort of title on the 49ers, I think that's an immediate upgrade to your offense. I don't know if the 49ers will be able to get him. I know there's some teams out there that have already fired, their offensive coordinator this year. They might push hard to go get him, a team like the Raiders or something like that. But to me, if you can get Ken Dorsey, you can bring him in, even if he's some sort of assistant here or there, and you can get him working with your quarterback. I mean, this is a guy who played at the NFL level. You mentioned he's a local guy coming back to his, the team. I believe they drafted him, right? Didn't the Niners draft Ken Dorsey?
7th round pick, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. You bring him back, work with another 7th round quarterback. Like, let's go. I love it. I think they should do everything they can to bring him in.
Actually, I kind of like him now that I think about it. I like him with a different Shanahan coach with McDaniels, because maybe even get a little knowledge from him about what Buffalo's doing in the AFC East from a division rival, the Dolphins. Maybe they bring him in as a consultant or, assistant quarterback coach or whatever it is. That one could make some sense too. I know Steelers fans would kill to have a different offensive coordinator. They hate Matt Canada, their offensive coordinator.
As well. Right, I know there's a lot of teams.
And the Raiders, I think, because Arinda, east of Oakland, Dorsey might even have been a Raiders fan instead of a Niners fan growing up in the Bay Area. What about the Raiders, who fired everybody just about on the opposite side of the ball? So I think he'll land on his feet just fine. But man, it feels like a real scapegoat firing there of Ken Dorsey. I will say though, I did listen to Joe Marino of Locked On Bills this morning after the firing, and he had a good point in that you can't blame him. He's not the one out there, fumbling the ball or dropping the ball. But he did say, look, there's just a lack of offensive execution, and you got to point somewhere. So at some point, it's like the guy that's coordinating the offense that's screwing up, you got to hold him accountable. And that's where he came from. Is like, okay, I guess, but it also screams to me that they just don't know what the heck's going on, and they don't know how to fix it. And they've got some problems on the defensive side of the ball in Buffalo too. They're 5-5, man. They're like the 10 seed right now in the AFC. It's not looking good for them to make the playoffs at this point.
I think prior to this game, Josh Allen had like the highest QBR. I think Brock Purdy just leapfrogged him, but he had like the highest QBR in the league, highest completion percentage in the league. So it's not like he's playing bad. He just has these terrible turnovers, and it's like I'm propping them up. I'm creating these good situations for him. Like, what else do you want me to do? And I don't know if you guys read the Mina Kimes tweet that talked about all the different metrics and where they were as far as their offense goes. But just in case you guys didn't hear, I'll read again. 3rd in offensive DVOA, 1st in success rate, 3rd in EPA per play, 4th in QBR now, 3rd in yards per play, 2nd in 3rd down conversions, which is really good, 3rd in red zone efficiency, which is really good. That doesn't scream bad coordinating to me.
Yeah, and there's one more thing. Where they rank dead last in the league? In the last month, they're 32nd in turnover differential. So that's your story right now for the Buffalo Bills.
And that's not your offensive coordinator that's doing that. That's
scapegoating. A lot of scapegoating going around with these coordinators.
Yeah, unless they think the coordinator is not building in answers for Josh Allen in the offense, and so Allen thinks he has to go hero ball. But we know he's kind of got that hero ball mentality built in. Yeah. Anyway,
a little bit of QB hubris when it comes to him. He just, I can make that throw. I know it.
Actually,
highest completion percentage in the NFL. So clearly, he's finding the answers a lot until he's not. Until he just goes haywire and goes full Brett Favre on us and throws a terrible pick.
Actually, Joe Marino used the term that I've borrowed from him, the host of Locked On Bills, and I love it. It's arm arrogance. And Josh Allen
like that
a lot. Purdy even has a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, Kyle calling him out. That was good. Good.
Absolutely. Yeah, I like Kyle. That was the worst play I've ever seen.
It worked, but it was still bad.
All right,
guys, before I get out of here, Wish Watch, 3 punts, 2 inside the 20, 1 to the 1, just out there doing his thing.
I mean, come on, MVP right there. Wish 1, McCaffrey 2, Purdy 3 right now. If we're ranking 4 MVPs,
right in there.
Maybe Trent Williams in there, seeing what he's meant to the team. All right, we got to get out of here. Thanks everybody for making this your first listen. Croc and I back tomorrow right here. Subscribe up on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. Locked On 49ers.
See you.